Picture this, two African leaders, one refused his presidential salary, drives modest cars, and transformed his country's GDP from $18 billion to $22 billion in just 2 years. The other stole so much money that investigators are still recovering billions a decade later. Now, which one do you think the West criticizes? If you guessed the one building his country, you would be absolutely right. Today we are driving deep into one of the most shocking contrasts in African leadership, and how a single woman allegedly pulled off what investigators call Nigeria's largest fraud in history. They say what a man can do, a woman can do even much more better. You see, I never understood the extent to which this statement was true. But here's what will blow your mind about it. We almost never found out. It was pure chance that exposed this web of corruption. And that begs a very terrifying question. How many more are still hidden? Now let's start with a tale of two leaders that perfectly captures Africa's crossroads today. Meet Captain Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso. At 36, he is the world's youngest president. Since taking power in 2022, he has accomplished what many African leaders haven't achieved in decades. He has grown Burkina Faso's GDP from $18 billion to $22 billion, rejected the IMF and World Bank loans, reduced ministers' salary by 30% and increased civil servants' pay by 50%. He has established tomato processing plants, built state-of-the-art gold refinery, distributed over 40 tractors to farmers, and is constructing a new airport. The West call him a cool leader. Africans and the African diaspora call him a visionary. Now meet Alison-Madueke, Nigeria's first female oil minister, first female OPEC president. But here is the thing that should keep every African awake at night. Why Traoré refused his presidential salary? Investigators allege she was involved in over $20 billion in Nigerian oil revenue theft, enough money to build the Dangote refinery, and also collecting $300,000 per oil contract as bribes. But here is the thing that should keep every African awake at night. We almost never discovered her alleged crimes. It took a random leak to a German journalist to uncover what might be the tip of the iceberg. So the question becomes, what if the leak never happened? It was early 2025, a German journalist named Bastian Obermeier received an anonymous message offering access to secret documents. Just a regular Tuesday that would change everything. This wasn't planned. This wasn't an investigation. An anonymous tip that would eventually expose the Panama Papers and reveal how the world's elite hide their wealth. Now, among those 11.5 million leaked documents was a name that would shock Nigeria. The files showed how she and her associates had allegedly set up shell companies to hide stolen oil money. Now think about this for a moment. If that whistleblower never came forward, if Bastien never got that message, the world might never have known about billions allegedly stolen from Nigeria's oil wealth. Which raises the obvious question: how many other Diezani's are out there right now, living lives of luxury while their countries struggle? How many secrets are still hidden in offshore accounts we'll never find? And here is what is even more chilling. Some investigators believe if Goodluck Jonathan had won the 2015 election, as she allegedly helped fund, all traces might have been wiped clean. She funded Goodluck Jonathan's election. And so if Goodluck had won this election, everything would have been wiped clean. We are going to explore that possibility in a moment. But first, let me show you exactly how this massive fraud worked out. Between 2011 and 2015, investigators alleged Diezani and her network operated like a well-oiled machine of corruption. Here is how it worked. Step 1. Oil contracts worth billions of dollars were allegedly awarded to friendly companies. Step 2. Those companies paid massive bribes, sometimes $300,000 per contract. Step 3. The money was laundered through shell companies in tax havens like the British Virgin Islands. The results, a $53 million super yacht, where Beyonce celebrated her 32nd birthday, a $50 million Manhattan apartment, 132 houses in Nigeria, 58 luxury cars, 3 private jets. Let's put this in perspective. While ordinary Nigerians struggled in poverty, investigators allege she was living a lifestyle that would make royalty jealous. We are talking about designer jewelry from Cartier, shopping sprees at Harrods, private school fees for her children, all allegedly funded by Nigeria's oil wealth. But here's what's really troubling. This wasn't just personal greed. Investigators believe this money was also used to fund election campaigns, potentially corrupting the very foundation of Nigerian democracy. And remember, we only knew about this because of an accidental leak. Makes you wonder what we still don't know, doesn't it? When President Buhari took office in 2015, the international hunt began. But here is where the story gets complicated and reveals some uncomfortable truths about global power dynamics. The FBI formed an international corruption task force. British authorities arrested Diezani in London. Nigerian courts issued warrants of arrest. Sounds like justice is coming, right? Not quite. Nearly a decade later, she's still living a very comfortable life. In St. John's Wood, one of London's most expensive neighborhoods, multiple extraction attempts have failed. She even allegedly obtained a Dominican diplomatic passport, possibly providing immunity from prosecution. Now, I am not here to point fingers, but there is a clear pattern we need to acknowledge. When corrupt African officials steal money, where do they spend it? The US, Europe, the West. These countries become, intentionally or not, safe havens for stolen African wealth. The luxury real estate markets, the private schools, the yacht clubs, they all benefit from this dirty money. And sometimes that creates, let's call it, complicated relationship when it comes to extradition. But here's what I find fascinating. While Diezani lives in exile, an African leader actually transforming his country faces constant criticism from the same Western powers. One analyst joked that he doesn't even know what Traoré will do next year because he is doing everything this year. This is leadership that prioritizes people over profits, sovereignty over submission. Look, I am not saying coups are ideal. Democracy matters. But when you see the contrast between leaders who build and leaders who allegedly loot, you understand why many Africans are saying, we don't care how you got to power, we care what you do with it. But here's the really disturbing part about Diezani's case. We are still uncovering the full extent of the damage. To understand the true cost of corruption like this, you need to think beyond the corruption money. Think about what that money could have built. $20 billion are allegedly missing from oil revenues. That's enough to build thousands of schools, hospitals, power plants. That's enough to transform millions of lives. Here is a perfect example of how this corruption still haunts Nigeria today. Nigeria now has Africa's largest oil refinery, but a government agency won't give it enough crude to function at full capacity. They still import refined oil. Why? Because the systems of corruptions are so entrenched that obvious solutions become complicated. Now imagine how many other Allisons are still involved in these decisions. How many people still benefit from keeping Nigeria dependent on imports instead of using its own facilities? Remember, this is not Nigeria's first rodeo. Former dictator Sani Abacha stole so much that 30 years later, money is still being recovered and returned to Nigeria. 30 years. That's how long this won't take to heal. But something still gives me hope. There is growing awareness. Young Africans are seeing the contrast between leaders like Traoré and the old guard. They are demanding better, and that's why investigations like this matter. Not just to punish the guilty, but to prevent future thefts and inspire a new generation of leaders. So where does this leave us? The Diezani case shows us three crucial things. First, corruption operates on a global scale. Money stolen in Lagos ends up in London mansions. So this isn't just an African problem, it's a system that requires international cooperation to solve. Second, we can't just rely on chance to expose corruption. That anonymous leak to a German journalist, that was luck. We need stronger institutions, better oversight, more transparency. We need systems that makes corruption impossible, not just difficult. Third, and most importantly, leadership matters. The contrast between Traoré's transformation in Burkina Faso and the alleged looting of Nigeria's oil wealth shows us that Africa has a choice. We can build or we can steal. We can serve our people or serve ourselves. But here is what I want you to understand. Corruption isn't inevitable. Look at Traoré's accomplishments in just 2 years. Look at how he has rejected foreign dependency and built local capacity. This is what's possible when leaders choose service over self-enrichment. We are making this video not just to expose past crimes, but to prevent future ones. To show what's possible, to prove that Africa has everything it needs to prosper, if we can keep it away from those who will steal it. So the question isn't asking whether we can build prosperous African nations. Traoré is proving we can. The question is whether we will have the courage to demand the leadership we deserve. So here's what I want you to do. Don't just be angry about corruption. Be inspired by the possibilities of transformation. Share the stories of leaders who are building, not just those who are stealing. In the comments, tell me what you would prioritize if you had the power to transform your country. What projects would you build first? Because that conversation about what we want to build together, that's how real change begins. And remember this, every time we demand transparency, every time we celebrate real achievement over empty promises, every time we choose substance over spectacle, we are contributing to Africa's renaissance. The continent's future isn't written yet, but if we learn the failures and success we have discussed today, that future can be brighter than anything we have imagined. Until next time, keep thinking strategically. See you in my next video.